I arrived late at night, after a long day of travel, to a small-town hotel that looked like it hadn't changed much since the 70s. The faded sign outside flickered weakly, and inside, the scent of old carpet and cleaning supplies filled the air. At the front desk, a tired-looking woman barely glanced up as she handed me the key to room 204. "Here you go," she muttered, her eyes avoiding mine. I made my way down the dimly lit corridor. The fluorescent bulbs buzzed faintly overhead, casting uneven shadows along the peeling wallpaper. When I reached the door marked 204, I noticed the lock looked a little worn but functional. The key turned smoothly, and I stepped inside. The room was simple: an old wooden dresser, a lumpy armchair, and a bed that looked like it had seen better days. Nothing unusual. I tossed my bag on the floor and collapsed onto the bed, hoping to get some sleep before the conference the next day. Around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by the unmistakable sound of footsteps outside my door. They weren't hurried or nervous, just slow, deliberate shuffles, like someone dragging their feet. I lay still, heart pounding, straining to listen. The hallway beyond my door was pitch black, except for the faint glow of the emergency exit signs at the far end. Curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and cracked the door open just enough to peek out. The corridor was empty, no sign of anyone. The footsteps had stopped. I told myself it was probably a guest returning late, or maybe the hotel staff doing a late-night check. I went back to bed, trying to calm my nerves. Then, around 3:30 a.m., the footsteps came again, this time closer. They paused right outside my door. Then the faint sound of a door closing echoed somewhere down the hall. I sat up, muscles tense. I cracked open the door wider this time, sweeping the beam of my flashlight down the hallway. Nothing. The air was still. No one. Morning came, and with it, a mix of relief and unease. Over breakfast, I mentioned the strange noises to the woman at the front desk, the same one from the night before. Her expression shifted subtly, a flicker of hesitation. "You stayed in room 204, she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. She looked around nervously, lowered her voice. "That room hasn't been used for months. It's been closed off since the plumbing was damaged last winter. We usually don't rent it out." I blinked, confusion creeping in. "But the key said 204. I'm sure of it." She swallowed hard. "I don't know how you got that key. Nobody's supposed to have access. We don't even clean that room anymore." I showed her the keychain, worn, brass, with a faded 204 tag. She paled. This isn't possible." I checked my phone and saw the door lock click shut behind me the previous night. There was no mistake. I left the hotel that day, unsettled. The footsteps, the silence, the empty hallway. None of it added up. No one else seemed to have answers. Was it a mix-up, a prank, or something else? All I know is, sometimes the most ordinary places hide the strangest secrets. And sometimes, you hear things you can't explain. It was just past midnight when I pulled into the parking lot of the Red Maple Hotel, a faded old building on the outskirts of town. My work trip had been unexpectedly extended, and with no other rooms available nearby, this place was my only option. I had never heard much about the Red Maple, except that it was old and a little rough around the edges. But at this hour, it was all I needed. The neon sign buzzed faintly above the entrance, its red glow flickering like a weak pulse. I parked, grabbed my bag, and stepped inside. The lobby smelled of stale cigarette smoke and worn fabric, a scent that somehow felt familiar and unsettling at once. The receptionist was an older man, probably nearing retirement, who barely looked up as he handed me a plastic keycard. "Room 312, top floor," he said gruffly, already turning back toward his computer. I nodded and took the dimly lit elevator up. The ride was silent except for the soft whirring of the machinery and the faint creak of old cables. When the doors slid open on the third floor, a musty, cold draft greeted me. Unlike the warm summer night outside, The hallway was long and narrow, lit by weak bulbs that flickered sporadically, casting odd shadows. I slid my card into the reader, and the door clicked open. Inside, the room was cramped but functional. 2 beds, a small TV mounted on the wall, and a desk cluttered with a half-empty water bottle and some old magazines. I tossed my bag on one of the beds and sat down, rubbing my hands together to warm up. As I unpacked, a knock came from the door. Surprised, I got up and opened it. No one was there, just the faint hum of the hallway light flickering outside. Shrugging, I closed the door and locked it. I went back to the bed, but my nerves were prickling now. Something felt off. I tried to dismiss it, chalking it up to exhaustion and an unfamiliar place. Around 1:27 a.m., a phone on the desk rang sharply, piercing the quiet room. I jumped and stared at it. It had no name on the caller ID, just a blank screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Silence. Then, a faint, ragged breath. "Hello?" Still nothing. I hung up. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. This time I didn't answer, but the ringing persisted intermittently for the next half hour. My unease grew. Trying to distract myself, I turned on the TV. Static. I fiddled with the remote. Nothing but static. The power flickered, and the room briefly went dark. When the lights returned, a note was on the desk. Written hastily on hotel stationery, it read, "Check the closet." I froze. I didn't leave the room once except to get ice earlier. I was alone. Slowly, almost unwillingly, I approached the closet. I opened it. Inside, the light bulb overhead buzzed and flickered. The closet was empty, save for a couple of hangers and a dusty broom. I shut the door quickly. My heart pounded. Then, the closet door slammed shut by itself. I spun around. No one. I rushed to the door and tried to unlock it. Stuck. Panic rising, I tried again. After several attempts, it finally opened. I bolted into the hallway. It was empty. The lights flickered erratically. Down the hall, I saw a shadow dart into room 310. I ran after it. The door to 310 was ajar. Inside, an elderly woman sat silently in a rocking chair, her back turned. "Are you okay?" I asked, voice trembling. She didn't respond. I reached out to touch her shoulder. She stiffened and slowly turned around. Her eyes were wide and empty. She whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I stumbled back and fled down the hall. The phone started ringing again, this time from the hallway phone on the wall. I stared at it, heart pounding. Then a hotel employee appeared, a young man in a worn uniform. "Sir, is everything all right?" he asked, concerned. I told him what happened. He nodded slowly. "Room 312. That room's been closed for years. No one's supposed to be in there. Then why was I given the key?" He looked away, uneasy. Sometimes, the system messes up. I demanded to be moved. He escorted me to room 315 on the first floor. That night was quieter, but I never felt truly safe. I learned later from other guests that the Red Maple was notorious for strange occurrences. Unexplained noises, sudden cold spots, guests vanishing or checking out early, never speaking of what they experienced. I left the hotel the next morning. The memory of that night stayed with me, not because of ghosts or monsters, but because I realized how little control we have when the place around us turns strange. And sometimes, the most terrifying thing is knowing that the threat isn't outside. It's inside the walls.